Hey there, welcome back to The Writing Life. I'm your host, John Hartness. I'm a professional fantasy author and editor and publisher and podcaster and YouTuber. And at this point, I don't even know what my real gig is versus my side hustle. But today, I am your science fiction and fantasy convention expert. Why do I say I'm an expert on science fiction and fantasy conventions? Because I am, bitches, because I am. I have, in the past 5 years, done well over 100 science fiction and fantasy conventions all over the Southeast and Mid-South, including over 40 in 2018 alone. I do somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 a year on a normal year. And they range in size from a few hundred to almost 100,000. So I have sold books at conventions, I have been a featured guest at conventions, and at this point, I have also been program director and helped put on conventions. So if you want to know how to do a science fiction and fantasy convention as a writer, I'm your boy. There's going to be a few of these videos, and this is the first one, which is basically why should you as a writer go to science fiction and fantasy conventions? Now, let me start by saying that all of the stuff in these videos, everything I'm saying, is primarily for indie authors. Self-published authors or small press authors. Authors that are published by major presses with big advances and big PR, your mileage will vary widely on this. But if you are a ground floor level writer working to build up one step at a time and you're doing it on your own, follow these steps and they'll help if you don't screw it up. Even if you do, there are very few mistakes you can make in a writing career that you can't recover from. All right, so let's start. Sorry, I have notes. See, I'm getting all professional. Next thing you know, I'm gonna stop having booze on camera. I don't have booze on camera. No, it's probably against a rule. So let me start by saying that I kind of hate the phrase "my tribe." I find it to be really overused, and it just feels a little kumbaya to me. If you've seen any of my other videos, kumbaya ain't exactly my thing. That's not really how we roll here at Casa Hartness. But it is one of the biggest things that you get from going to a science fiction and fantasy convention. The sense of community, the sense of being part of something bigger than yourself, the kinship of working, talking to people, sharing meals with people who are all working toward the same thing, telling stories and making a living, or even just making a side income by telling those stories. Now, when I first started self-publishing, one of the very first things I did was look up conventions and start asking them to book me as a panelist and a guest. I did this because I had presented at conventions for 15 years in my other life as a theatrical professional, as a lighting designer, as a systems designer. I was accustomed to going to a convention and talking to people and selling them on the services that I provided. So it wasn't a big shift for me to, to sell them on myself as a writer or my work. Sorry, it it's late. Again, it's another after midnight taping. I don't even have a good excuse. I was out playing Magic all night, and then I watched the Super Bowl halftime show, which was really good. It was an awesome spectacle. I'm very obviously too old to enjoy the Super Bowl halftime show much anymore, because I was like, I've heard 2 of those songs. That's great. And I was like, Jesus, I need to be wearing my socks pulled up to my knees and be telling people to get off my lawn. But that's neither here nor there. So you go to science fiction and fantasy conventions to meet others who are trying to do what you're trying to do. The very first convention I went to as a writer was a little tiny gaming convention in Columbia, South Carolina called RoundCon. And it was a gaming-centered convention that was, for that year, for the very first time, it was adding a writing component to the convention. So when I emailed the guy, he's like, yes, I need writers. I didn't know this was their first year with a writing track, because it was my first year with a book. What do I know? The answer is nothing, by the way. I knew nothing, Jon Snow. But when I went down there, it's like, okay, whatever. I'll take a box of books. I'll set them up on the table and I'll talk to people. The people I ended up talking to are still good friends of mine today. The people I met at that convention were Crimson Heart, Misty Massey, Kalena Price, and Faith Hunter. Now, 2 of that bunch are national best-selling authors who have been incredibly helpful to me in my career over the last 10 years. And I met them because we were all at this tiny little convention. There were about 6 writing panels, and every one of us was scheduled to be on all of them because they'd never done a writing track before. There were 4 people that weren't us in the writing panels, but we still did them. We did the panels, we had a good time, and I made friends that have lasted for a decade. And I met people who introduced me to other people. I met people who I've worked on projects with. I met people who I've published. The whole thing, because I just said, all right, I'll go down to Columbia and spend a weekend. It helped that I had a day job at the time, so I could afford that. I wasn't trying to do it on the money I made writing, which is good for that first year, real good. But finding people who are doing this is invaluable. So you go to a convention to find your tribe. You go to conventions to learn from people who are better than you. Now, I don't mean that if you're an author with 10 books under your belt that you need to buy a badge and sit in the audience at a convention with 1,000 people. I do mean, however, that when you're a person with 10 books under your belt and you're sitting on a panel with the guest of honor at a convention, pay attention. Listen to what they're saying. Listen to how they're saying it. Listen to how they present themselves. Learn from the other people up there at the front of the room on the table with you. Learn from people in the bar. Business gets done in the bar. You do not have to drink. You do not have to touch a drop of alcohol to go to the bar at a convention and talk to people and meet people and network. Darren Kennedy, who I've published now 5 of his novels, Darren's not a drinker, but Darren's in the bar. Darren's in the bar talking to people. He's chatting, he's having a good time. He's drinking, I don't know, Coke, water, whatever. I'm drinking Cider, maybe Coke, probably alternating the two. But you got to be there. Most of the books that I published through Falstaff Books came from conversations I had in bars. And it's not because I was drunk. It's because I got to know those writers as human beings. They got to know me as a human being. I got to know them as someone that I want to work with for years to come. And they got to know me as someone who they could trust to take care of their intellectual property and to pay them on time. And you can't always do that through an email. All of the best friends I have in this industry come from conventions. There are not a ton of writers in Bullock Creek, South Carolina, where I grew up. I did not have a network of science fiction and fantasy novelists when I came out of the entertainment lighting industry and started doing this. I met these people at conventions. I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, yeah, I don't carry books to convention panels anymore. For a long time, I carried a book or two and I set them up in front of me so people could see the book cover. And then I noticed that whenever I was on a panel with an author who's significantly bigger than me or who's the guest of honor at the convention, none of them ever had that sitting up in front of them. They were never carrying their books because they didn't have to. Well, in a case of dress for the job you want, not the job you have, I stopped carrying them myself. I'm like, yeah, you should know what my books look like. No, I know you don't know what my books look like. But if I'm sitting up there next to Jonathan Mayberry, who's one of the top horror and fantasy and thriller writers in the world, and I'm sitting up there with Laurel K. Hamilton and Kim Harrison and Mercedes Lackey and Jim Butcher, and they're all sitting up there with nothing in front of them but their little name plate and maybe a couple of business cards, and I'm sitting there with 4 books on stands. Who looks like they don't belong? It's not a matter of professionalism. It's a matter of I want to look just like everybody who's bigger and better than me. I want to learn from people who are further on in their career path than me. So when I hear somebody say, yeah, well, I do this. Or when I hear Stuart Jaffe talk about how he used these methods to triple his newsletter subscriber base in a year, I say, hey, buddy, you want to give me a lesson? And I pull out a notepad and I sat in Gail Martin's kitchen and I took notes as Stuart Jaffe explained to me how to set up a funnel for growing a newsletter, because he's better at it than me. So I asked. You find these people at conventions. You get to know them and they get to know you at conventions. Because no matter how many times I can communicate with somebody via email or via Facebook or via Twitter or YouTube comments, please feel free to leave comments. I get lonely. I don't get lonely. I have a cat. I can't be lonely. I'm not worth lonely. Just ask the cat. No matter how often I communicate with somebody in that fashion, nothing beats looking them in the eye, looking across a table while we're sharing a meal. You can't beat that. You can't. There's nothing in electronic communication. I don't give a shit how great your query letter is. It's not going to impress me more than if I spend an hour with you in the bar at a convention and you're awesome. So you go to conventions to learn from people who are better than you, and you go to conventions to meet people. You go to conventions to make friends in the industry. You go to conventions to find people to blurb your books. I have a blurb on the cover of my books from Faith Hunter, who I met at the very first science fiction and fantasy con I ever did. I'm currently soliciting blurbs for a book we're publishing this spring. And I'm messaging people that I know from the con circuit or that I've been on panels with. All of that. So why? Oh yeah, I was going to tell this story. Okay, this is a good one. So let's go back to that RoundCon story. So, like I said, it was me and Crimson Heart and Misty Massey and Kalena Price and Faith Hunter. And I was talking with Kalena, and she mentioned that her Alex Craft series, which was the series that had just hit the USA Today bestseller list, that was her second series. And she got noticed with her first series that she sold to a small press. And I said, really? Because by this point I knew that for most small presses you don't need an agent to submit. They typically are either open to unagented submissions or they have short open periods for submissions. By the way, we're closed to unagented submissions unless you meet me at a convention. And I say, yeah, that sounds good, send it. So I was talking to Kalena, and she told me about working with Bellbridge Books, which at the time was a relatively new offshoot of Bell Books. They had published a lot of Southern fiction, a lot of women's fiction, some romance, some mystery, and Bellbridge was their science fiction and fantasy imprint, which is who she was with. And she said that she really enjoyed working with the editors there. They had given her a good cover, and she learned a lot. I said, that sounds pretty good. Well, I went home and did some research. I found out that Deb Dixon, who's the publisher for Bellbridge Books, was going to be at a convention in a few months in Louisville, Kentucky. I thought, okay, well, I need to get to Louisville. I need to figure out how to get to Louisville without going broke. So then, I was a guest at Con Carolinas that year for the very first time. Oh, sorry, I kicked the thing. And I met a guy named Steven Zimmer. Steven Zimmer happened to be running the writing track at that convention in Louisville. And I said, hey, Zimmer, you should put me on panels. Because why wouldn't he? I had 2 books out. 3 by that point. I had 3 books out. I was absolutely qualified to talk about writing. I had self-published 3 whole novels. I didn't know a goddamn thing. And I still knew more than a lot of the people who were out there listening, so I don't feel like I shortchanged anybody too badly. If I gave you really shitty advice in 2010, I'm sorry. If I give you shitty advice now, I'm sorry. So Zimmer said, well, I don't have a lot of open slots, but I can get you a free badge, and I can make sure I put you on at least 1 panel. I'll take it. So I drove to Louisville. It's 8 hours from Charlotte to Louisville in the ball-melting heat of the summer. Oh my God, it was hot. It was the hottest summer for 100 years in Kentucky. It was so hot. You know why I remember how hot it was? Because the air conditioning in the hotel broke. This becomes very relevant very soon, I promise. This hotel was an old motel, the kind where you drive up and there's the parking lot and here's the door to your room, that kind of motel. Except somebody had decided to put a terrarium over it. So it was like Under the Dome, that Stephen King book that went on about 300 pages too long. It was like that. It was a giant Florida room. So they encased the whole damn thing in glass. Now what that does, because the way those motel rooms are built is with the pass-through air conditioners. So they blow cold air into the room, hot air out into the open air. Not if you put a terrarium over the hotel. That means they blow hot air out into the hallway, which is getting sun beating down. I swear to you, it was so hot in that hallway that at one point when I went to leave my room in the afternoon, I had to open the door. I had to wrap my shirt tail around my hand to open the doorknob because it was so hot. I stopped because you're taught when you're a little kid, if the door's hot, don't open the door. And then I thought, no, it's not a fire. It's just that damn hot. I was right. It was just that damn hot. So the air conditioner has shit the bed. It is 1,000 degrees in this hotel. There are about 4 public rooms that have AC. One of them is the panel room. And they have a writers' meetup where people meet and talk and chat, and it's great. And I introduced myself to Alan Gilbreth from Dark Oak Press, who went on to publish several anthologies that I'm in and 2 that I co-edited. I met Lee Martindale, who's a fantastic story writer and anthologist and has been a great friend to me ever since. And in this room, they're doing what they call publisher spotlights, where they have 3 or 4 small presses and they all sit up there and they do a panel and they each talk about what their press does, how they do business, and then you can ask them questions. So there's no moderator for one of them, and Lee drafts me to moderate, so I moderate. And about 3/4 of the way through the panel, this cute little young lady from the reception desk comes in and she says, "I'm sorry, y'all. This air conditioning unit's putting too much of a load on our air handlers. I'm gonna have to turn off the air in this room." And she shuts off the air conditioner. Now, let me lay this out here for you. I had spent almost 20 years in specialty contracting. That's not how air conditioners work. The 25 by 30 room that we were in was not doing a damn thing to harm the massive air conditioning unit that was trying to cool the entire hotel. It was obviously not ducted into the same unit because it was still putting out cold air. But I didn't say anything. I just let the nice young lady turn off the air and walk out of the room because there was only about 10 minutes of panel left. It didn't get too hot by the end of the panel, but it was starting to creep up there. It's probably about 80 degrees in the room by the time everybody leaves. The next panel featured Deb Dixon from Bellbridge Books, the person I had driven 8 hours to meet. I'm like, well, there's only 10 minutes between panels. There's no real point in me trying to go anywhere. The room's pretty empty. There's only this lady and I guess it's her husband over there in the corner. Let's go see if we can fix things. So I walked to the back of the room. There on the wall is a thermostat. Now, in a lot of public facilities, the thermostat is either key code locked or it's covered with that little plastic thing and you've got to have a little key, or they've somehow obscured all the knobs, or it's computerized and it's controlled through, I don't know, magic. Nah. This looked like the thermostat in my dad's house. I looked at it and I was like, kick. From off to cool. Blessed cool air starts filtering into the room. I go back to my seat. Nice lady looks over and says, did you just do what I think you just did? I said, do you think I just turned the damn air on? She said, yeah. I said, then yes. Yes, I did. She said, I like you. I'm Dev Dixon from Bellbridge Books. I said, hi, I'm John Hartness. I drove 8 hours to suck up to you. How am I doing so far? I'm working on my 8th book for Deb. So I'd say that worked out well. I just assumed it was going to work out. I drove 8 hours on nothing but assuming that it was going to be fine. We spend a lot of time talking ourselves out of success. I have lived by the motto, back in 2008, 2009, people talked about banks as being too big to fail. And then they did. I live by a different mantra. I am too stupid to fail. Now, I don't consider myself a stupid man. My wife and cat may at times disagree. What I mean by that is that I do not have even the merest concept that I will fail. It just doesn't ever occur to me until I blow something up and fail at it. If I'm doing something, I assume that I'm going to do it. I had supportive parents. They told me when I was young, you can grow up and be anything you want to be. Well, I believed them because they were my parents. So I wanted to be a writer when I was a little kid. That part kind of worked out. I got a whole shelf full of stuff I've written. I drove 8 hours to meet this person who I really knew nothing about because I assumed it would work out. When you start down any road, you think about what's going to happen in your head. If you think you're going to fail, you will. I'm not going to say that if you think you're going to succeed, you will absolutely succeed. Send me $99.99 and I'll tell you how. Feel free to send me $100. Mostly just because I eat a lot of DoorDash and delivery charges are expensive. But it's not like there's a secret. The power of positive thinking is largely bullshit. But believing that it will all just naturally work out keeps me from talking myself out of success. You've heard me on other videos talk about self-rejection. I did another Twitter pitch contest last week. I clicked like on 14 different pitches. I had a much better response rate this time because I went on Twitter and wrote a threaded post about the fact that I thought it was, silly that people didn't even respond with a query. I got 5 replies out of 14 as opposed to 4 out of 12. Oh wait, that's almost exactly the same ratio. About a third. One of those 5 wasn't actually a book yet, and he's working on a screenplay. So I appreciated that he got back to me because it meant that he saw who I was, went to my Twitter feed, read what I had written where I said, fucking reply even if all you're looking for is agents and you don't want to work with a small press. At least have the courtesy to let me know. So he had the courtesy to let me know. So he gets a gold star. The other 4 sent me a query letter in the first 3 chapters, just like I asked for in my pinned tweet. Good on them. Probably sometime February or March of this year, they will rise to the top of the queue. I will look at it and I'll make a determination whether or not I'm asking for a full manuscript or whether I'm telling them thank you, but no thank you. But that means that 9 out of 14 self-rejected. Or maybe they rejected me. Maybe they went and looked at my Twitter feed and decided I was way too liberal for them. That's fine. I'm good with that. But I bet that's not what happened. I bet they just self-rejected. Because I'm too stupid to fail, I literally never do that. So I think it's going to work out. The first year I went down to Dragon Con, I thought, I want to go to Dragon Con, I want to meet people, I want to network, and I want to sit in on some writing panels and see what the big conventions are like. I did all of that. It was great. I also agreed in principle to a 6-book contract with Bellbridge Books at that convention, so that was really great. But how do you end up doing a big convention like Dragon Con? There are a lot of ways. You know, sell 1 million books and you're probably good. For the rest of us, do smaller conventions. Start off by finding your local convention. Find your local 300 or 400 person convention. Apply to be a guest. If they already have enough guests, ask them if they need moderators. Get yourself seen by the people that run those conventions. Because you know who else is at your local 500 person convention? The people who run the 1,000 person convention 2 hours away. Or the people that run the 1,500 person convention 3 hours away. Because people who run conventions go to conventions. They go to promote their con, and they go because they love conventions. Pardon me, apple cider. I was at a con in Charleston this year that, I don't know, maybe had 600 people. And the program director for the convention I just went to in January, she was there hanging out because she wanted to go to a con. You meet people. You get seen at small cons by the people who run mid-sized cons. Then you do mid-sized cons. You get seen at mid-sized cons by people who run bigger cons. That's one way that it works. You meet people. I started doing LibertyCon because I met Rich Grolier at breakfast one year at StellarCon. I met him over breakfast just because I struck up a conversation with the man. We're now friends. I've done LibertyCon several times. I'll be back there this summer. You go to meet people, and you have to do it sincerely. You have to be genuine. I am just like this. This me that you see on videos, this is the me you will see at a convention. I may be very, very slightly better dressed. Okay, I'll probably be wearing one of the exact same t-shirts, but I'll usually have a collared shirt on over it. It's my story and I'm sticking to it. And if you see me after March, I'll probably have purple hair because I was talking with the wife today and it's time to dye this mop again. Anyway, not that you care about my sartorial or grooming habits, but you go and you do these things so that you can go and do bigger things, so that you can go and do bigger, even bigger things. How did I end up in an anthology for Chris Kennedy Publishing this year, or last year, and another one coming this year? Because Chris and I know each other from the con circuit for almost 10 years. How did I end up in an anthology edited by Laurel K. Hamilton coming out in April? Well, her co-editor, who published his first book for me this year, met me at Dragon Con. All of these things build on each other, and especially for those of us who are small press and indie authors, we don't have the built-in network of, hey, we share an agent. Me, first-time author, you, New York Times bestseller, we should be best buds because we share an agent. And yes, people who share agents do have a built-in connection because it's an icebreaker. We don't have that. I don't have an agent, so I don't have anybody who's with the same agent. I own the press, so I don't get that, hey, we have the same publisher, but we don't know anything about each other. I know a little bit about the writers that we publish. Probably more than a lot of publishers do, because it's my company and I pay attention to that shit. Because I don't want to publish assholes. Oh yeah, that's one of the rules. I have to be the biggest asshole in the room. If I try to publish somebody who's a bigger jerk than me, it's not going to work. So those are some of the reasons that I really like conventions. But one of the last ones, actually the last one, because I've run on and on. Sometimes you need a damn reason to put on pants. No, I'm not sitting here in my underpants. I left the house today, so I'm still in my jeans. But I work in t-shirts and sweatpants and fuzzy hang on. Y'all, this is my office footwear. This is what I meet the UPS guy in. My wife, she gets me a new pair of funny bedroom slippers every year. That's the 2020 edition. If I don't go to a meetup, if I don't go to a writers club meeting, if I don't go to a convention, I may not put on real pants, a belt, or shoes for a week or two. And that's not healthy. You need to get out. You need to interact with other human beings. You need to interact with other human beings that aren't married to you. My wife and I have been together for 25 years. We need new things to talk about, so we need to go out and find new people so we can come home and make fun of them to one another. You know, I was going to say something like, oh, we don't do that, but nah, we totally do. And you know it, because you do too. Going to conventions gives you the socialization that you used to have with a real job or a day job, because God knows this is a real job. I'm recording this at 12:30 in the morning because I didn't do it earlier today. I didn't do that shit for my old day job. So get out there. Put yourself out there. Go to the bar. If you're going to be at Dragon Con this year in Atlanta, Labor Day, the lobby bar, the Westin Hotel, I'll be there most nights. Come hang out. Have a drink. Buy me a Coke. Buy me an Angry Orchard. Do that Thursday or Friday because they usually run out by the end of Friday night, and then I'm sad and I have to drink bad beer or good beer. So go out, meet people. Networking. People think networking is a dirty word, and I know I need to oil the chair. Networking isn't, oh, I want to meet this person because they can be good for my career. Networking is meeting people and being nice because you're nice or because you're a genuinely good human being. Jonathan Mabry was talking to me at Dragon Con about his idea of he has in his head this list of folks that are his good person network. Instead of like the good old boy network, this is just the good person network, because he wants to deal with people that are good human beings. And Jonathan's one of the best people I know. He's a kind, wonderful human being who's been nothing but gracious to me. So I was like, yeah, that sounds good. So then Jonathan called over Kevin J. Anderson, and Kevin and I and Jonathan sat there for a couple hours talking. Kevin and I had been on panels together, but we never really talked. Kevin was one of the people that I first watched at the year I went to Dragon Con to sit in the audience for panels. I watched his presentation on how to make a living as a writer. 9 years later, I'm sitting in the bar drinking with him. Because I went out and I met people and I was genuine and sincere and all of those other words that mean genuine and sincere. So go do that. Now, oh, damn. Sorry. I can't remember if I took my Claritin today or not, but my allergies are killing me. New thing. I decided that since I do run a press, I should mention books that we publish at the end of each of these videos. So, A Whisper of Death by Paul Barrett. This is the first book in his epic fantasy trilogy, The Saga of the Necromancer. The reason I'm particularly telling you that you should go pick this book up is because a month from now, what's the date? Yeah, on the 25th of this month, on the 25th of February, Cry of Decay, the second book in the Saga of the Necromancer, comes out. So if you pick up A Whisper of Death now and read it, and then you'll be ready for A Cry of Decay. This is the story of a young man and his zombies and his love and his friends, and it's very much a hero's journey story. It's a journey of self-discovery. It's a big, old, Tad Williams-y, Ray Feisty, David Eddings-y fantasy. It's great. It's fun. It's dark. I mean, it's a necromancer and a whole lot of, and a whole lot of giggles. But it's really well written, and it really moves. It's really well paced. So I'm looking forward to reading all of the second one. I did some of the first round of edits on it. So go out and pick up A Whisper of Death by Paul Barrett. You can order copies from falstaffbooks.com or print copies wherever books are sold. The ebook is exclusively available on Amazon. And I don't know, I'm going to bed. I got to get up in the morning. I still owe a chapter on Black Knight 8, so I'm going to go sleep. You guys go back to doing whatever you were doing. If this was your lunch break, you're almost out of time. So sign up for conventions. Find out what the ones that are local to you are. Go to the bar. You still don't have to drink, but you have to go to the bar. And if you're going to be at Dragon Con, come find me. I'll be in the bar. Till then, be good to one another, okay?